Here we will understand the hydrophily, that is the pollination by water. So when the pollination or the transfer of the pollen grains from the mature anther to the stigma is brought about with the help of water, then it is known as hydrophily. Now, when we study the plant species, nearly about 30%, only 30 genera are only following this hydrophily out of the total plant species. And this pollination, this process of pollination by water is very uncommon. That means it is not very common among the plants. The hydrophily or the pollination by water, depending upon where the pollination is happening, we are classifying it or we are dividing it into two types, that is hypohydrophily and epihydrophily. Hypohydrophily is a kind of pollination in which the pollination is brought about inside the water. That means the plants are submerged within the water and the pollination takes place over there only. Whereas in the case of epihydrophily, the pollination process, although the plants are submerged, but it takes place on the surface of the water. Now, we'll study about the two types of pollination, how these two types, that is hypohydrophily and epihydrophily, how it is brought about with the help of various examples. Now, before we jump on to the process actually, let us try and understand the adaptations these plants have undergone so as to bring about effective pollination. The first adaptation which is seen in the plants is the flowers are small and inconspicuous. That means they are again not very prominent and they are small in size because they are carried by the flowers have to be present inside the water. The flowers are colorless and nectarless. That means same as in the wind pollinated flowers we have seen, they are also colorless and nectarless. Here also the plants which are pollinated by this method are colorless and nectarless because the color and nectar is mostly to attract the insects. The floral parts remain, they are unwettable. That means since these plants are submerged inside the water, the plants, the flowers of these plants are unwettable because of the presence of a mucilaginous or waxy coating. The pollen grains have mucilaginous coating. This mucilaginous coating makes them unwettable, at the same time gives them protection. The stigma of the flowers is unwettable, it is long and it is sticky. So as to catch, the stickiness will help the pollen grains to be attached to the stigma. That is to hold on. And again long stigma so as to trap the pollen grains which are traveling by the with the help of water current. We see this type of pollination in the case of Vallisneria, Hydrilla, Zostera, etc. These are various examples of the pollination which is done in the hydrophilous plants. Coming to hypohydrophily. Hypohydrophily, the example is Zostera. Now, Zostera follows hypohydrophily. In these plants, these are completely submerged rooted plants. So, if you see over here, these are the rooted plants. And here, there is a female flower, which is not, I am marking it as a blue one. And there is another, the male flower. Now, when the maturation happens or along with the wind current, these are released, the pollen grains are released, which are then trapped by the flower of the female and the pollination occurs. Now, you have to understand that since the pollen grains, if the pollen grains are heavy, then we have already studied that pollen grains are having a mucilaginous covering. At the same time, they are unwettable. So, the pollen grains can be easily carried by the water. Also, the specific gravity of the pollen grains is similar to that of water so that they can easily flow. If the specific gravity of the pollen grains will be more, then they will tend to settle down. So, the specific gravity has a very important role over here in which the submerged plants need to have the same specific gravity. So, the pollen grains in Zostera have similar specific gravity as that of water. This enables them to flow and along with the water current and to come in contact with the female flower so as to bring about the pollination. Coming to epihydrophily, we take Vallisneria as an example. Now, Vallisneria is a dioecious plant. That is, it is the male and the female are separate. So, it is also a submerged plant. Now, it is known as the ribbon grass or the eel grass because it has long, wavy, ribbon-like female over here and the male. Now, the male flower over here and this is the female flower. Now, what happens? This female flower is on the top. Now, the plant this is the female we are talking and this is the male. So, on maturation, the pollen grains, that is the male flower, breaks from here and is carried by the water current on the top. Over here, the pollen grains, the inflorescence it breaks open. Over there, it is first carried on maturation to the surface of the water where it breaks open due to water current and then it fuses or it causes the pollination and is trapped by the female flower. Now, since over here the pollination is taking place above the surface or at the surface of water, we are calling it as epihydrophily. And since the pollination is completely taking place within the water body, it is known as hypohydrophily. As you can see over here, the adaptation is such so as to bring about the effective pollination. However, the hydrophily is followed by very few plants or it is practiced by very few genera of the plant species. Thank you.